10 at the Fillmore Silver Spring.
A Not So Fairy Tale. I'm Jason Horton.
I'm Rebecca Lieb.
And this is Ghost Town.
In 1917, 10-year-old Frances Griffiths and her mother moved from South Africa to the small village of Cottingley in West Yorkshire of the United Kingdom. They stayed with Frances's aunt and uncle, Polly and Arthur, who had a daughter of their own, a teenager named Elsie. Frances and Elsie were close, playing together in the backyard garden, going by the stream, and generally just being fancy, uptight British kids playing in the woods. But here's the thing. The two girls swore they went to the woods to see fairies. And to prove it, they took a camera. Little did they know a couple innocent photos would change the course of their lives forever. Today we're talking about the mysterious Cottingley fairies, a bizarre phenomenon that took Great Britain by storm. Elsie's dad Arthur loved photography and was known for being an amateur photographer around town. The girls took his camera, a mid-G quarter plate, into the woods, and 30 minutes later ran back excitedly. Arthur took the camera to his own makeshift darkroom to develop the picture. The photo shows Frances kind of laying behind a little hill or bush, flowers in her hair, her face in her hands. She's staring directly at the camera, seemingly unmoved by 4 dancing fairies right by her elbows. Of course, Arthur was impressed by the girls' cute little creative prank, dismissing the fairies as cardboard cutouts the girls probably created and trucked out to the middle of the woods. No harm, no foul. But 2 months later, the girls borrowed his camera again and returned from the woods with another photograph. This one was of Elsie sitting on the lawn, holding her hand out to a gnome. The gnome is like textbook-looking gnome, tights, a kind of reddish coat, and a pointy red hat. Seeing that photo, Arthur Wright was like, yeah, okay, I think I've had enough of your prank. Elsie's mom, Polly, though, believed that this photo and the one before were absolutely real. Towards the end of 1918, Frances sent a letter to an old friend back in Cape Town named Johanna Parvin. In the letter, she sent a copy of one of the photos of herself with her fairies, the first one. It's a flattering photo, I get it. On the back of the photo, she wrote, "It is funny, I never used to see them in Africa. It must be too hot for them there." In 1919, Polly attended a meeting of the Theosophical Society, a kind of philosophy book club where they had lectures and discussions, a real fun English Victorian type shit. The lecture that evening was on fairy life, and at the end of the meeting, Polly Wright stood up and showed 2 fairy photographs taken by her daughter and niece. The crowd went wild, and the photographs were displayed at the Society's annual conference a few months later. There they caught the eye of one of the Society's most powerful members, Edward Gardner, who recognized that the photos were a tool to gain traction for the Theosophical Society and its ideals, one of which was that humanity is undergoing a cycle of evolution towards increasing perfection. If that sounds familiar to you, it's because it's used a lot in religions and philosophies, for better or worse. Think eugenics or Mormonism. That being said, seeing these photos made Gardner think that possibly the next cycle of evolution was underway. Gardner sent the prints and original negatives to Harold Snelling, a local photography expert. Snelling said that, quote, "the 2 negatives are entirely genuine, unfaked photographs, with no trace whatsoever of studio work involving card or paper models." He did not, however, specifically say the picture showed fairies, only that they were straightforward photographs of whatever was in front of the camera at the time. But hey, good enough for Gardner, who immediately started selling prints of the photos at his lectures. At this point, these fairy photographs find themselves in the hands of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Yes, that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, author of Sherlock fucking Holmes. Something you might not know about Doyle was that he was a prominent spiritualist, and he passed the photos along to his favorite spiritualist magazine called Light. Not soon after, and very conveniently, Doyle was commissioned by the Strand magazine to write an article on fairies for their Christmas issue. Doyle wrote to Elsie and her father requesting permission to use the photos in his article. Arthur Wright was obviously impressed that Doyle was involved and said, "Sure, Arthur Conan Doyle, you can use these photos for your supernatural puff piece." Refused any payment on the grounds that, if genuine, the images should not be, quote, soiled by money. Let's take a break.
You may be into punk rock, soft rock, or classic rock, R&B, hip-hop, or house, country, techno, or techno-country. But no matter what kind of music you listen to, here's something else you should hear. Please consider getting vaccinated. Talk to your pharmacist today about Comirnaty, COVID-19 vaccine mRNA. This message brought to you by BioNTech and Pfizer.
This episode is brought to you by Candy Crush Saga. The holidays can be pretty hectic, so take a little time for yourself with the ultimate holiday treat, the classic Match 3 puzzle Candy Crush Saga. And right now, you can catch the limited time event Sweet Surprise Season and win sweet daily rewards like a super rare party booster and up to 10 gold bars. Don't miss out. Play Sweet Surprise Season and Candy Crush Saga and crush it this holiday season now until January 1st. Download from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Hi, hello, how are you?
Hello, how's it going?
This is the check-in.
This is time for you to check in with us.
It's time for you.
It's your time.
It's your time.
In this crazy world, it's your time.
So sit back and listen to us. Thank you for listening and supporting the show.
That's right. Grovel at your feet.
Thank you to all the patrons that help support the show. And thank you to our government. How relaxing is it to talk government?
Always.
It's just like a deep breath or a drink of room temperature lemon water. Cleansing alkaline lemon water.
Okay.
You know them. We love them. The mayors.
That's right.
We got a little David Bull.
Hello.
We got a little Ashley Matson.
Hello.
We got a little Dara Rosenzweig.
Hello.
We got a little James Harrington.
Hello.
And we got one governor.
Only one.
To rule them all.
Avian Noble.
In stereo.
Yeah, we're doing it again together. Does that make anyone happy? Anyone? No.
If you like bonus episodes, early access with no chit-chat, if you want to go back and listen to episodes you haven't listened to yet with no ads or chit-chat,
Whoa, sounds
they're all
good.
there. They're archived, waiting for you, tagged as early access. You can just binge, baby. Go to patreon.com/ghosttownpod. And we have one Apple Podcast review, but it's a goodie.
Oh.
Love it. 5 stars. Love this podcast. The topics are interesting and thought-provoking. The hosts have pleasant voices, especially with the Invisalign that I'm using right now.
Oh,
Wow.
interesting.
You didn't even notice, did you?
Wow.
I noticed it.
I didn't.
I personally enjoy the added banter. I'm interested in what Rebecca and Jason have to say. Overall, a great podcast from Milka11 in the US&A.
Someone is interested in what we have to say.
And the sound of our voices.
Oh my God. Wow. I don't know what to say. I'm flattered. My impulse is to give you money. So tell me where to write a check.
People should just start adding their Venmos to these kind reviews.
Yeah.
You never know.
If you put your Venmo at the bottom, who knows what'll happen?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't.
That's the mystery.
That's right. How compelling is that mystery?
You leave a review and leave your Venmo, maybe somebody gets $1. I don't know. Maybe somebody gets $1,000.
Nobody's getting $1,000. Not in money, but maybe in experiences.
I don't even want to know what that equates to. But you know what? Maybe the world of photography and Sherlock Holmes.
So we've got fairies and fairy photos out in the world, creating a huge discussion in Great Britain. Gardner and Doyle sought a certificate of authenticity on the fairy photos from Kodak, who, upon looking at the photos, said that, quote, they show no signs of being faked, and that they could not be taken as conclusive evidence that they were authentic photographs of fairies. So Kodak declined to issue a certificate of authenticity for them. The prints were also examined by another photographic company with a less famous or cool name called Ilford, who reported that there was, quote, some evidence of faking. Gardner and Doyle, of course, were like, let's just call these photos real and, keep getting money and attention for them, okay? Cool? Cool. In 1920, Gardner goes to visit the Wright family with 2 folding plate cameras and 24 secretly marked photographic plates and gives the cameras to Elsie and Frances. Gardner described this experience in his 1945 book called Fairies, a book of real fairies, as, I went off to Cottingley again, taking the 2 cameras and plates from London, and met the family and explained to the 2 girls the simple working of the cameras, giving one to each to keep. The cameras were loaded, and my final advice was that they need to go up to the glen only on fine days, as they have been accustomed to do before, entice the fairies, as they called their way of attracting them, and see what they could get. I suggested only the most obvious and easy precautions about lighting and distance, for I knew it was essential that they should feel free and unhampered and have no burden of responsibility. If nothing came of it all, I told them they were not to mind a bit. Frances and Elsie insisted that the fairies would not show themselves if others were watching, convenient, so everybody left and the girls, surprised, took a couple more photos of the fairies. In the first photo, Frances and the Leaping Fairy, Frances in curly hair and a big bow is shown in profile staring down a fairy. The second, Fairy offering a posy of harebells to Elsie, is a photo that shows a fairy hovering over a branch and offering Elsie a flower. 2 days later, the girls took the last picture, fairies in their sunbath, which is pretty self-explanatory. Gardner sent the photos to Doyle, who flipped out. More photos for his article writing, perfect. With Doyle's fairy evidence, the December 1920 issue of The Strand sold out within days of publication. To protect the girls' anonymity, Frances and Elsie were called Alice and Iris, and the Wright family was referred to as the Carpenters. Doyle was sure his article would start a revolution. He ended the piece with these words: "The recognition of their existence will jolt the material 20th century mind out of its heavy ruts in the mud and will make it admit that there is glamour and a mystery to life." Early press coverage of the photos in Doyle's article were all over the place. Most people thought it was a child's hoax. Some people, again, spiritualism was huge at the time, thought it was a miracle. Doyle used the later photographs for another article in The Strand, in which he described other accounts of fairy sightings. Gardner made a final visit to Cottingley in August 1921, bringing along a famed occultist named Geoffrey Hodson. At that point, the girls were over fairies and all the attention they were getting, and produced no more fairies or photos of fairies, though Hodson himself wrote an article that he saw fairies everywhere, writing tons of notes on his magical wooded backyard experience. The girls played along, but later said that they considered Hodson a fake. After 1921, fairy mania calmed down. Elsie and Frances grew up, got married, and moved abroad. But more than 40 years later, in 1966, a reporter from the Daily Express newspaper traced Elsie, who was then back in England. She admitted to the reporter that the fairies might have been, quote, "figments of my imagination." But she said it was possible that she had somehow managed to photograph her own thoughts. This interview brought renewed interest in the photos, and in September 1976, Elsie and Frances were interviewed for a broadcast on Yorkshire television. When pressed, both women agreed that, quote, "a rational person doesn't see fairies," but they denied having fabricated the photographs. In 1978, magician and scientific skeptic James Randi and a team from the Committee for Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, that's a mouthful of a name, examined the photographs using a computer enhancement process and said that the photos were faked. Geoffrey Crawley, editor of the British Journal of Photography, undertook a, quote, "major scientific investigation of the photographs and the events surrounding them," and also concluded that the photos were not real. Finally, in 1983, in their 80s, the cousins admitted to the magazine The Unexplained that the photographs had been faked, although both maintained that they really had seen fairies. They made the photos by copying illustrations of dancing girls from a popular children's book of the time, Princess Mary's Gift Book, and drew wings on them. They then cut out the cardboard figures and posed with them for photos, disposing of their props when they were done. But the cousins disagreed about the fifth and final photograph, fairies in their sunbath. Elsie said it was a fake, just like all the others, but Frances insisted that it was genuine. In a 1985 interview on Yorkshire Television's Arthur C. Clarke's World of Strange Powers, Elsie and Frances admitted that they were too embarrassed to come clean after fooling Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of Sherlock Holmes. Elsie said, quote, "two village kids and a brilliant man like Conan Doyle, we could only keep quiet." In the same interview, Frances said, quote, "I never even thought of it as being a fraud. It was just Elsie and I having a bit of fun, and I can't understand to this day why they were taken in. They wanted to be taken in." Frances died in 1986 and Elsie in 1988, having essentially come clean about Cottingley fairies. Still, in a 2009 episode of BBC's Antiques Roadshow, Frances's daughter, Christine Lynch, said that she vehemently believed, just like her mother, that the fairies in the fifth photograph were genuine.
You don't really hear much about the validity of fairies specifically, which makes it interesting in itself.
Yeah.
And it seemed like Arthur Conan Doyle did at least some legwork to validate these photos.
Totally.
But probably just enough to, I believe it, I'm interested in it, it will sell.
Totally.
If no one was interested, his interest in it would be probably waning. So there's a benefit to everybody. And it's not like these two girls sought out to scam people. What they did wasn't wrong. It's just somebody found it and validated it. And when you're a kid, you want to, and an adult says, "Hey, is this real? I believe this is real." Mm-hmm. It's really not on them to be honest about it, frankly. It's for them to
perpetuate.
Exactly.
Really, they're kids, right? They're kids. They do a prank, and this climate of this specific time is like hungry for that prank. It's almost if like Jonathan Franzen was like, "Hey, ghosts are real, or like something where it's like warlocks are real, and everyone's like, oh my, this fucking giant like literary genius is validating this. I can imagine even being the girls, it'd be like, this person believes it. Maybe we're wrong. Like maybe we have something that we didn't think that we did, or we made something of this thing that wasn't true.
And what is real and what is not real is just what you believe. Mm-hmm. And also, when you're the author of Sherlock Holmes, the greatest detective,
yeah,
if it passes your test, then that has to be enough.
Yeah, you can convince people who may have been at the root of a prank that, again, that they're wrong, especially if they're kids and who the fuck knows, and you're getting all this attention. It's pretty insane, and it really speaks to how crazy like Victorian London was at the time. We've done a couple pieces on this. The Phantasmagoria, a couple Halloweens ago, is one of them. Like, they love this shit, and they ate it up. And even now, like, they were talking about it 40 and 80 years later. We're talking about it right now in 2021.
And to admit that 90% of it is not real, but be like, no, it would be a huge coincidence to say that, yeah, we faked all of these, but for some reason this one kind of came to life. And also, listen, if it's in your legacy, these fairy photos, of course, maybe the daughter's going to be like, well, no, I know all those were fake, but this unbelievable thing is real. Maybe I can't speak to what she really thinks, but really it's to continue. And fine, it's fun. Continue this. It's not hurting anyone.
It's bullshit. It's like when people are lying, and then it's like a Real Housewives lie, really, when it's like, oh, this was a lie. And they're like, we caught you on this. And you're like, but this part was still very true. It's true. It feels bullshitty. It's fun to think about. These pictures are also like very magical looking, and the photographic technology at the time, I'm sure it was not super impressive. So just like seeing this supernatural image captured is magical in and of itself.
And the fact that it's not a common thing to young girls in the woods to cut out and put wings on things. So it is a pretty unique environment for that. Like we've seen with people who talk about their experiences with UFOs, whether they get debunked or not, they want to keep, it's their thing.
They want to believe.
And they want to believe. And whether they believe it as much as they say they are, it becomes their identity to keep talking about these things and go on tours and write books. And if it interests people and it makes people happy and it gives us something to talk about, more power to them.
More power to them and to the fairy world that is real.
You may be into punk rock, soft rock, or classic rock, R&B, hip-hop, or house, country, techno, or techno-country. But no matter what kind of music you listen to, here's something else you should hear. Please consider getting vaccinated. Talk to your pharmacist today about Comirnaty, COVID-19 vaccine mRNA. This message brought to you by BioNTech and Pfizer.